Hello and welcome to this Astranti video covering the top 10 most likely unseen issues for the OCS exam November 2021 and February 2022 sittings. Now, before I take you through my list itself, I'll first of all start off by discussing the basis of my choices for the unseen issues. After that, I'll then be talking about how you can use the information given to you in this video to help you prepare as effectively as possible for your exams. So let's get started by talking about why I've chosen the issues that I have chosen. So when it comes to making up this list, of course this list just represents my best guess as to the issues that are going to come up in this exam. And of course I haven't actually seen the exams myself. As such, this list isn't foolproof and you should treat it accordingly. Nonetheless, I did consider a number of different criteria for inclusion on my top 10 list. And the first of these is the level of focus given to different aspects of the pre-seen company in the pre-seen document. So of course, as we can imagine, the more space there is devoted to the issue in the pre-seen document, this gives some indication as to the importance of that issue to the company and therefore in the exam. Now, if you'd like to know more about the key points from the pre-seen document, I would recommend that you refer to the pre-seen analysis video series for this sitting. Linked into this is the degree of importance attached to different topics by the examiner. So if areas of key theory constitute a large part of core activities, as outlined in CIMA's operational level blueprint, then this, in conjunction with signposting to these issues in the pre-seen document, gives a fairly strong indication that these issues are likely to come up in the exam. Further, I've also tried to pick out issues that are important to TreadCushy from a strategic point of view. So by considering the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats to the company, we can infer which issues might be of particular strategic importance. For instance, issues associated with TreadCushy addressing areas of threat or weakness, or alternatively capitalizing on opportunities as they become available, are likely to form the basis of scenarios that you'll encounter in the exam. And if you'd like to see more on this, more on a SWOT analysis, that is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, I would recommend that you check out our strategic analysis video for TreadCushy. And linked into this importance is the importance attached to various issues by the directors of TreadCushy as outlined in the pre-seen document. For instance, we know that Harry Blanc, one of the co-founders of the company, is interested in seeing the company expand into offering fitness apparel, just as one example. One last basis of the choice is actually my own experience. So we can look to past exams and see which issues have cropped up there, as past exams are going to be a bit of a guide as to the content of future exams as well, particularly if issues have come up time and time again. Additionally, we can also put ourselves in the shoes of the examiner and consider how easy various issues actually are for them to write questions about, how easy it is to provide relevant information for you in the unseen for you to then apply your knowledge to. So of course, if it is relatively easy to test your knowledge of these issues in an exam format, then this is more likely to be a question that you'll come across when it comes to the exam. Okay, so in summary, the criteria that I've considered for inclusion in this top 10 list are the degree of focus afforded to the different topics in the pre-seen document and in the syllabus, and therefore by the examiner, strategic importance to the company, as well as my own experience with working on this exam, as well as my own experience and knowledge with frequently occurring topics in previous OCS sittings. So now moving on, I'll now discuss some tips with regards to how you should use this information to prepare for your actual exam. So first of all, I would suggest that you do prepare some key models ahead of time based on the information given to you in the pre-seen. And so this is using models that you're already aware of from your wider studies. As a general example, you could go through Porter's value chain and use this to analyse TreadCushy based on the information given to you in the pre-seen document. In doing so, you'd be building up your knowledge of this model in advance, and then crucially, when it came to the exam, you could apply it and adapt it to the issues and points raised in the unseen. And in fact, it's crucial that you do adapt your knowledge and your application to the model based on the information given to you in the exam. So don't just regurgitate your pre-prepared bit of writing, it does need to be tailored towards the exam issues. Now, another key aspect of preparation is to make sure that you sit mock exams that cover the key issues. and in doing so, you'll build up practice, you'll build up experience, and you'll just become overall more adept at considering these issues in relation to TreadCushy. Something else that the examiner really likes to see is relevant real-life examples of issues discussed in the pre-scene. For instance, if you're talking about an ethical issue, then you could raise a real-world example of a real-world shoe company behaving ethically or unethically, and use this to bolster the arguments and suggestions that you're making in your answer. So given the fact that the OCS exam does have this kind of real-world focus, real-life examples are something that the examiner does like to see. So to help you to do this, I would suggest that you prepare some sample paragraphs ahead of time and memorize these, and then write them in the exam where appropriate. I'd also suggest that you learn typical key points in relation to the top 10 issues that I'll be discussing now. So by making sure that you're well aware of the advantages and disadvantages of different approaches, for instance approaches to budgeting, this means that they'll be right there on the tip of your tongue when it comes to the exam. And then you can also consider how these advantages and disadvantages relate to TreadCushy as well as to any unseen issues. And then lastly, you must be prepared for which models you need to use to support the issues raised in the unseen exam. So by looking at these top 10 issues here, I'll be discussing relevant theory for each of them. So this means that you can brush up on this relevant theory, and therefore you'll have good knowledge during the exam of the theory that I think is most likely to be being tested. Okay, so now I've taken you through these key exam preparation tips. It's now time to get into the top 10 list itself, and we'll start off by discussing the first issue on my list, which is risk and uncertainty. Okay, so risk and uncertainty. Why do I think that this is likely to come up in the OCS exam? Well, first of all, it's a key P1 topic and a key part of the P1 syllabus. As such, it is regularly examined and has come up time and time again in previous sittings. Further, it is also a key part of core activity E for the case study, which is worth a weighting of between 17 to 25%. So this is the rationale behind my inclusion of risk and uncertainty on this list. Now let's consider some of the likely issues that could come up in the exam in relation to this topic. The first being asked to perform a risk analysis of a new investment, strategy or project. So as we can see, a relatively diverse range of ways in which this key P1 topic could be examined. Now, given the fact that we know that TreadCushy wants to expand and begin selling 1 million pairs of athletic shoes per year by 2025, and also key figures within the company want the company to start offering new products, it is very likely that the company will be making new investments and starting new projects going forward. And of course, these will come with some risk attached. So it might well be your job in the exam to take a look at this risk. Alternatively, you could be measuring risk in a particular area of the business. For instance, any risks associated with the company choosing to put a lot of resources into physical retail stores as opposed to online sales channels, just as one example. Further, you might be asked to provide insight on the company's decision-making process in situations where there is a bit of uncertainty. So these are some likely issues that I think might come up in relation to this topic. So what about some key points to raise in general? Well, you should first of all consider the relationship between risk and reward in risk-based questions. You should, where possible, look at the value of the different outcomes and the likelihood associated with those outcomes taking place, and by doing so, you can form a bit of a judgment as to the riskiness and therefore the appropriateness of any proposed projects, investments, and so on. In weighing all this up, ideally, you should have a consideration of the risk attitude of the company. For instance, if the company is particularly risk averse, then it's going to be less willing to take on a project with a higher risk attached to it, even if the potential rewards of this project are high. So you should be looking at the pre-seen document as well as information given to you in the unseen to look for clues as to the risk attitude of TreadCushy, and then ideally considering this risk attitude in relation to questions on the topic of risk. Another key point to raise, the application of decision models where relevant. So if the question asks, you can then use your knowledge of these key decision models as outlined in P1 to identify what would be the best course of action under each of these models, and explain how these models deal with uncertainty. So what are some key bits of relevant theory in relation to this topic? So we have sensitivity analysis, which allows us to consider how much flex there is in a particular factor before a company starts to incur losses. For instance, how much would revenue have to fall before the company's profit went below zero? So using sensitivity analysis can be an effective way of testing out the riskiness of a project. We also have expected values. So for instance, if we're considering taking on a project and we have all the different predicted outcomes of the project, we can multiply the value of these outcomes by their associated probabilities, add them up, and this will give us the long-term average value of taking on this project. We also have decision trees, which is a good way to visually represent the different decisions in a situation, possible outcomes and associated probabilities. Standard deviations, again a good way of measuring the risk associated with a project or an investment, and so on. Risk attitudes, as I've touched upon earlier, so the company could be risk averse and not wanting to take on risk, risk neutral, or alternatively risk seeking and more attracted to investments and projects where potential outcomes can be really high, but of course the risk associated with them is high as well. Then when it comes to risk-based decisions, we have key decision models such as maxi-min, maxi-max, and mini-max regret, as well as payoff tables. So a lot of different relevant theory here that you can revise to help you become more confident if you're faced with a question based on risk and uncertainty in your OCS exam. Okay, so let's now move on to the next key issue in my list, which is time series analysis. So why have I chosen time series analysis? Well, the first reason is because it is a key topic in the P1 syllabus, and not only this, but it's also regularly examined at the OCS exam. So it's come up many times in the past, and in fact, it's relatively easy for the examiner to test you on. So what are some likely issues that could come up in the exam in relation to time series analysis? Well, I think it is relatively likely that you could be asked to look at the trend in terms of sales for the company's shoes. Given the fact that the company is wanting to expand and sell 1 million pairs of athletic shoes per year by 2025, it is going to be quite concerned with the sales volume of its shoes in recent periods to see if it's on track to actually hit this target. In addition to looking at the overall trend, it's quite likely that you should also be asked to consider the seasonal variation. We know from the preceding document that there are peak periods of sales in the company's shoes when new shoe models are released. In fact, we're told that sales of the company's shoes do actually exhibit seasonality. That is to say, quoting from the pre-scene, sales are not uniformly distributed across the year, and in fact peak sales correspond to new design launches of TreadCushy shoes. So seasonal variation based on this information given to us in the pre-scene does seem a relatively likely issue to come up. Another likely issue is discussing how trend values could be calculated for a time series that you're given in the exam. However, don't worry, you won't be asked to perform the actual calculations yourself in the exam, and instead it'll be a case of explaining how these calculations were done. Another set of likely issues are to do with models for calculating seasonal variation. That is multiplicative and additive models, two ways of calculating seasonal variation around the trend line. So moving on, what are some key points to raise in relation to these issues? Well, first of all, it would be good to identify peak periods in any time series you are given, whether this is sales or potentially there could be peak periods with regards to costs as well, for instance, and then discuss what these peak periods mean. So again, you could bring it back to corresponding to the launch of new designs, or perhaps some other reason relating to an issue given to you in the unseen. Generally, it's good to not only identify trends, but also interpret them as well. For instance, you could imagine that a fall in sales, as an example, could be due to the fact that the shoes are becoming less trendy. So just looking into the reasons behind trends based on information given to you in the pre-seen documents as well as the unseen. And again, it's key to explain the calculation process for aspects of time series analysis, such as the process for calculating moving averages or performing multiplicative or additive variation calculations, but again, you'll be explaining the process as opposed to carrying it out yourself. The OCS exam is not calculation based. So what is the relevant theory here? Well, of course, being able to identify different types of trend, having a good understanding of what trend is going to be key for time series analysis. Knowledge of linear regression 2 as a key way of calculating the trend line, moving averages and how these are calculated, and then the additive and multiplicative models of seasonal variation, as I've already touched upon. So kind of bread and butter P1 topics that you should really brush up on and be well aware of, so you can walk into the OCS exam with a lot of confidence if any time series analysis related questions do in fact come up. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you found it useful. I'd just like to take a moment to talk about some of the different case study products we offer here at Astranti. All of these products are available together as a package as part of our case study course. However, they can also be purchased individually. So we have our exam technique series, which comprises both a study text and a video series. So in this product, we'll teach you how to plan your answers, analyse the case study material, and manage your time in the exam. So all of these are vital skills that you need to have to make sure you don't miss out on any marks. We also have our theory revision series, which again is both a study text and a series of videos. So these talk about specific theories relevant to your case study exam. These are all topics that are frequently tested, and so this part of our course is directly tailored to the exams that you will be sitting. Additionally, we have our pre-scene analysis. So as part of this, there will be a video that goes through the pre-scene document point by point to discuss the most important aspects that you need to know ahead of your exam. Additionally, there will be a video that will talk about the top 10 most likely unseen issues that are likely to come up in the exam. Plus, we have the strategic analysis video. This will be talking about the key models taken from the CIMA syllabus and then discuss how they apply directly to the case study that you will be looking at. We also have our industry analysis, a comprehensive document that looks at the different aspects of the real-world industry that the case study company operates within. So this will give you everything from an overview of the history of the industry to any issues relating to corporate social responsibility and protecting the environment, analysis of real-world competitors to the case study company, and overall trends in that industry. It will also provide 25 real-world industry issues that can be used as examples in the exam. In addition to this document, there is also an accompanying video. We also provide mock exams, which are based on past case study exams, and also based on the exact case study that you will be tested on. Therefore, they are designed to be as close as we possibly can get them to the actual exam you will be sitting. We also offer marking and feedback. So if you purchase this, you'll get a tutor to go through your exam script, tell you if you would have passed your exam, and also tell you what you could have done better going forward. You'll also get comments on your exam technique, so all the different things to help you get as prepared as possible for sitting the real thing. We also offer question packs. So if you'd like to practice a specific part of the CIMA syllabus, you can look at a question pack directly tailored to that area, so you can get that vital practice in ahead of your exam. We also offer 2 all-day masterclasses, one at the start of the course and one at the end. So the first one will be covering how to plan effectively ahead of your exam. Then the second is a revision masterclass, which will be going through all the material that you've been learning throughout your studies to give you a nice refresher before sitting that exam. So head over to www.astranti.com for more information about all of these case study products. Until then, I'd like to take the chance to wish you all the best of luck for your case study exam.